You know who else is very good? The Ohio State University Buckeyes.
Let's talk about it.
With a win at home versus previously undefeated Penn State, a top 10 matchup, 20-12, the final score, back and forth, defensive affair for the most part. There was one big playmaker on the field in this game, Marvin Harrison Jr. with Emeka Egbuka out for Ohio State again, and Travion Henderson out also for Ohio State. They relied on Marvin Harrison, and he could not be stopped. 11 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown. So, Joshua, I will let you bask in the glow of a Buckeye victory, another one against Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, this was, I think, a really good win for Ohio State in terms of another tough win where offense wasn't scoring a ton.
Right.
You had some drives that stalled out, and the defense had to really step up. And I know there are a lot of people, and I would tend to agree with some of this, that like, well, Drew Aller didn't play very well, and the offensive play calling for Penn State. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I thought the offensive play calling was abysmal for Penn State at times. Like, there's no layer to the play calling. And passing downs they're trying to run.
Just chuck it deep, right? At some point, just chuck it deep.
They're not explosive. You can go on. And Drew Aller did not play well, but I also think part of that is Ohio State forced him not to play well because they got pressure on him early, and he kind of went into his shell and became a young quarterback. And I think they forced him to look as bad as he's looked all year long. This is, to me, watching what the arc of this team has been for the last 2 years, this is very satisfying to me. The two best teams that they have played this year, Notre Dame and Penn State, they didn't score a lot of points. They didn't. And they had to make some gritty plays. They did. And the defense had to really step up.
Yeah.
And they did. And so I like this version of Ohio State, knowing that I don't know how many points they're going to put up, but the opposing team's not going to score very many, and you always have a shot when you can do that.
You always have a shot, and you look at this Ohio State defense, they held Penn State to 1 of 16 on third down.
And the one wasn't until late in garbage time, wasn't it?
And they didn't get past Ohio State's 20 until late in the game with less than a minute left, and they're already up 26. The game was in the bag, really. So you look at this defense, they're dominant. And then offensively, they did enough. They were missing some key components. But Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, to have 11 receptions, I think that's a career high for him in a big-time game. It just continues to build his resume. We already know that he's all world. He'll probably be the first. He'll definitely be the first wide receiver taken in the NFL draft. There's no doubt in my mind. He's an exceptional player, but to show up in moments like this and when they needed him the most, it speaks to how elite he is.
Matt, what do you make of Kyle McCord in this one? Because we already mentioned Drew Aller was not great. Maybe his worst game so far, 18 of 42 for just 191. But Kyle McCord, shaky at times, does finish with 286 yards, as we mentioned, many of them to Marvin Harrison Jr. I thought this game could come down to Penn State being more dynamic at rushing the passer, being able to rattle Kyle McCord more than Ohio State was able to rattle Drew Aller. There were times where it looked like that could happen. That might be the result. Chop Robinson went out of the game early. That was a huge blow for Penn State. But what'd you think of Kyle McCord and how he handled this game?
Well, it's interesting because you watch Kyle McCord and you sometimes will see it. It'll jump off the page and be like, okay, that's that dude. And he's still 22 of 35, 286 with a TD. But then there's a number of times where there's plays to be made. There's guys that are open where the ball placement's off or he's behind. And so that's when you go back and you evaluate the film and say, we're not there yet with Kyle McCord. And we've got to continue to develop that skill set, because if he gets it right and he starts to play with a little bit more confidence, because at times I think he lacks that confidence right now. He still questions maybe his own self. And you can even see the frustration by Ryan Day on the sideline, talking to him, hey, just throw the ball. Because again, there was times where he was protected and there was opportunities down the field to be made, or even on slant routes where all you've got to do is put it on your guy, let those playmakers make the play, and he wasn't able to do that at times.
I'll ask you this question. There's two other things about this game I want to talk about before we get out of here for sure, but I feel like sometimes his footwork is not good.
He's throwing off his back foot.
And he drifts in his drops. And I think when he drives the football, he's a much better passer than when his feet aren't set and he's kind of drifting. So I'm obviously not a quarterback coach, but like that to me is indicative of the confidence that you were talking about. Denzel Burke didn't play in this game, talking about the defense, and he's arguably the best player on that defense this year. So I thought that was really positive. We need to talk about the play that was the touchdown that was taken off the board for Penn State, though.
That was a turning point.
That was a huge turning point because you had a strip sack recovery. Curtis Jacobs takes it to the crib, and Kalen King had a holding on Marv that takes that off the board. The next play, Ohio State scores a touchdown. Touchdowns were hard to come by in this game, and that to me is about where the margins are. When you get a couple of teams here, inexperienced quarterbacks, but you know that they're very talented teams, you're playing in the margins sometimes.
Yeah, that play, and then it snowballs. But to be clear, that was a hold. We do think that was a hold. It was a proper penalty.
Wasn't there another penalty right after that, though?
I think Kalen may have gotten beaten right after that again.
Yeah.
Like it was back-to-back penalties. So that's how quickly momentum can shift. Because if Penn State goes and scores right there, now it's a different ball game, right? Like you're playing with a little bit more confidence. You got a little bit more swagger on the sideline. And then it's so deflating to come back. Not only you have that overturned, but now it's a penalty. Tack on that yards. You have another penalty, puts you first and goal, and you're able to go in and push it in. It just changes the complexities of the game entirely.
This is what I wish maybe Mike Robb was in here for a guest appearance on this one, because I'd love to hear what he has to say about this.
He's got a lot to say.
Have we determined that Penn State under James Franklin now is an also starring character in the Big Ten?
It's interesting because I asked a question on social media on Friday, who was under more pressure to win in this game? Was it Ryan Day or was it James Franklin? Because the Ryan Day narrative, as we all know, is a team tough enough, right? Like, can he really win against the big boys? He's undefeated against unranked teams, but where he stumbles is against really good teams. But James Franklin, the stat coming into the game about only one win over Ohio State, has not had success against Michigan or top 10 teams in general. And I think this is a part of the narrative. It might be the also starring, which is a shame, but I think their fortunes turn because no divisions next year. It's a different story because you don't have to play Ohio State and Michigan every year, and now your chances are a little bit better.
You can get big wins over Oregon. You can get a big win over USC now, and it does make things. And you don't have to play those other two teams all the time.
But the pressure's on. I mean,
it's on for sure.
Like the resume is what the resume says it is, right? Your record is against the big time opponents. If you want to have a seat at the big boy table, then these are games at some point you've got to start winning, at least on maybe not on a consistent basis, but not to the level that they've lost. What are they? What's he? 1-8
now?
Yeah, 1-8. It's not a good thing, especially because all the hype going in this season with the team that they have, the two running backs, the quarterback that they thought that was going to lead them to the promised land this year, which is a lot of pressure to put on a young kid.
And that defense.
And the defense. You got first rounders at every level.
Because I think that's still a really good defense.
We've seen him have some success in the past against Michigan and Ohio State, but it was kind of when both of those teams and programs were down. It's like yet to be proven whether he can do it. Get that big win when either of those teams are also flying high.